So life didn't change that much. Our private lives just went on. And everyone actually, where we went, of course, knew who we were. But they didn't bother us. So, yeah, we lived a normal life, just continued.
Björn Ulvaeus just named names, 7 of them. No warning, no sugarcoating. Just 7 singers he says nearly ruined him. Voices the world adores, but he secretly resented for decades. One mocked ABBA at their peak. Another hijacked his studio sessions and made him feel invisible. But the most shocking? A global icon he once called a friend until she shattered him behind closed doors. "There are 7 I'll never forgive," he said. The real question: who made the list, and why did it take 40 years for him to say it out loud? 1. Cher, the imitation that stung. When Cher released Dancing Queen in 2018, the world rejoiced. It was a glittering tribute to ABBA's timeless sound, bold, glamorous, and drenched in nostalgia. For millions, it was a love letter, but for Björn Ulvaeus, it felt like a gut punch. To him, ABBA's songs weren't just pop hits, they were emotional landmarks. The Winner Takes It All wasn't a karaoke anthem, it was his divorce. SOS wasn't sparkle and disco balls, it was desperation captured in melody. And yet, Cher's versions replaced sorrow with spectacle, stripping the songs of their vulnerability and replacing them with Hollywood sheen. Björn never criticized her publicly. In interviews, he smiled and praised the production. But those close to him say the praise was forced. In private, he felt violated. "You don't dress pain in rhinestones," he reportedly told a close friend. "She made it sound like an encore. It was supposed to sound like an ending." What hurt more wasn't the execution. It was the applause, the standing ovations, the headlines calling it the ultimate ABBA tribute. To Björn, it felt like the world had cheered for a version of his pain he didn't recognize. He didn't hate Cher for her voice. He respected her talent, but he hated what she did with his story. She turned it into a show, polished, packaged, and profitable. What was personal to him became performance to her. And in that transformation, something essential was lost. 2. Celine Dion, the voice that rewrote the notes. Celine Dion is known for her powerhouse voice, soaring, flawless, and theatrical. So when she performed The Winner Takes It All during a European award show, most considered it a stunning tribute. But to Björn Ulvaeus, it was something else entirely. It was a betrayal dressed in elegance. The song wasn't just another ballad. It was his emotional collapse, a raw, autobiographical track born from the ashes of his failed marriage. Every word, every note was tied to a wound. But in Celine's hands, the heartbreak was polished, cinematic, and distant. She reworked the pacing, softened the crescendos, and gave it a grandeur Björn never intended. He didn't publicly condemn the performance. He didn't have to. In private circles, he made it clear. That wasn't a ballad, he reportedly said. It was a breakdown. She turned my breakdown into a Broadway curtain call. The issue wasn't her voice. It was the detachment. Björn believed music, especially that song, needed to hurt a little. Celine's version, though vocally perfect, felt to him like emotional erasure. The desperation had been replaced with control. The silence between lines, gone. The ache, lost beneath technical brilliance. What made it worse was the audience's response. Thunderous applause, standing ovations, glowing reviews. But all Björn could hear was a ghost of the song he once bled into. To him, it was no longer his. It wasn't about ownership, it was about intention. Celine sang it beautifully, but she never lived it. And for Björn, that made all the difference. Bono, the ego that drowned the room. It happened backstage at a global charity event. One green room, 2 legends, and a moment Björn Ulvaeus would never forget. He and Bono crossed paths for the first time, 2 titans from different musical worlds. But instead of mutual respect, there was condescension. Bono, surrounded by handlers and journalists, reportedly referred to ABBA's music as catchy background noise. He didn't say it cruelly, He said it casually, as if it were fact. To him, ABBA was light entertainment, sugar for the ears. Björn heard it clearly, and though he said nothing in return, something inside him snapped. Later, in a Swedish interview, Björn reflected on the encounter. "He treated us like confetti, not composers," he said. The words weren't bitter, they were tired. It wasn't the first time he'd felt dismissed by the rock elite. But coming from Bono, someone hailed for his lyrical depth, it felt personal. Björn never sought validation from the rock world, but the insults stuck. Not because it was loud, but because it was subtle. It was the offhand arrogance, the belief that pop couldn't be profound, that melody couldn't hold meaning. From that day on, Björn viewed Bono differently, not as an enemy, but as a symbol of how some corners of the industry refuse to see artistry in joy, storytelling in simplicity, or pain in a 3-minute chorus. He didn't need Bono's respect, but he never forgot that moment, not because of what was said, but because of what it revealed. 4. Agnetha Fältskog, the voice who vanished. They were once inseparable, partners in music, marriage, and global fame. Björn Ulvaeus and Agnetha Fältskog weren't just ABBA's golden duo, they were the emotional core of the band. But when their marriage ended, something else quietly broke. Not just love, not just trust. The music changed, and so did she. Björn kept writing. He poured heartbreak into lyrics. Agnetha kept singing. But something was missing. In rehearsals, she grew distant. In the studio, detached. On stage, she was professional, flawless even, but cold. The warmth that once held their harmonies together was gone, and Björn felt every inch of the void. She left the stage long before she left the band, he once told a close friend. To the public, they were still ABBA, but behind closed doors, they were strangers performing old roles. Björn watched the woman who once inspired his most intimate songs retreat into silence. No fights, no drama, just absence. It wasn't just that she pulled away, it was how quietly she did it. She no longer gave input. She avoided eye contact. She arrived late, left early, and never lingered. Björn later admitted it crushed him more than the divorce itself. The music stayed, he said, but she didn't. Their final performances together were technically perfect, emotionally hollow. And when ABBA disbanded, Agnetha disappeared completely, not just from him, but from the world. No calls, no collaborations, no closure. Björn never publicly condemned her, but in interviews, her name carried a weight nothing else did. Of all the singers who heard him, Agnetha's absence wasn't loud. It was quiet, and that made it the hardest to forget. Johnny Rotten, the punk who spit on pop. At the height of ABBA's global dominance, while their songs climbed charts and filled arenas, Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols launched a verbal grenade, plastic music for plastic people. It wasn't just a jab, it was open contempt. Punk was rising, and Rotten made ABBA its punching bag. He mocked their harmonies, sneered at their image, and dismissed everything they represented. Björn Ulvaeus never fired back. No press statement, no interviews, just silence. But years later, he admitted the wound was real. "He made us feel like a joke," Björn said quietly, and I hated that. Rotten didn't just insult the sound, he attacked the soul. ABBA stood for melody, structure, beauty. Johnny Rotten stood for chaos, rejection, rebellion. To him, ABBA was the enemy, too clean, too commercial, too joyful. And to Björn, that rejection wasn't just personal, it was cultural. It was a declaration that pop couldn't be art. What hurt most was the influence Rotten carried. His voice wasn't just loud, it echoed through a generation. Suddenly, liking ABBA meant being uncool, being soft, being fake. And no matter how many records they sold, that shadow lingered. Björn later described the experience as a kind of erasure. "We weren't even worth debating," he said, "just dismissed. For a man who spent years crafting every note, every lyric, that kind of contempt didn't fade easily." He never met Rotten, never wanted to, but his name remained on the list, not for what he did, but for what he made millions believe, that pop was empty, that joy was fake, and that ABBA didn't matter. 6. Bibi Rexha, the newcomer who crossed the line. It was a throwaway comment, the kind made quickly, carelessly, and often for clicks. In an interview clipped for social media, Bibi Rexha joked that ABBA's music was grandma disco. The room laughed, the internet ran with it, but Björn Ulvaeus didn't. For decades, Björn had weathered criticism with grace. He never chased headlines, never clapped back. But this time, something cracked. In a rare public statement, he responded with quiet precision, "If youth is your only compass, you'll forget where greatness lives." He didn't name her. He didn't need to. To Björn, her comment wasn't just disrespectful. It was emblematic of something deeper. A generation raised on virality, not value. On playlists, not albums. On instant reaction, not lasting resonance. Grandma disco wasn't just a dig. It was a dismissal of craft, history, and legacy. ABBA had spent years writing songs that outlived decades. And now, with a single smirk, it was being reduced to a punchline. Björn wasn't angry because she didn't like ABBA. He was angry because she didn't understand it. And worse, she didn't care to. He didn't expect praise from every young artist, but he expected awareness, a sense of context, a recognition that music didn't start in 2012, that behind every catchy chorus was someone who bled into the melody. Bibi Rexha never apologized. She may not have even noticed the reaction, but Björn did. And he remembered, because for a man who spent his life building timeless songs, being called obsolete was the deepest insult of all. 7. Elaine Paige, the diva who took too much. In the early 1980s, Björn Ulvaeus stepped outside ABBA's orbit to explore new creative territory. One such venture was a high-profile collaboration with West End legend Elaine Paige. On paper, it was a dream match, his songwriting precision paired with her powerhouse voice. But almost immediately, the dream soured. Björn expected collaboration. What he got was competition. Elaine didn't just want to sing, she wanted to dominate. Rehearsals turned into battles over phrasing, spotlight placement, and control. Every melody had to be adjusted, every lyric discussed. She wanted longer solos, louder crescendos, and more dramatic pauses. It became her show, Björn later said, not the music's. What began as artistic tension quickly became personal. Paige questioned the material, requested rewrites, and reportedly clashed with producers. Björn, known for his patience, found himself retreating, not because he couldn't argue back, but because he didn't want to fight for something that was already being overpowered. The final recording sessions were tense, cold, and joyless. The chemistry was gone. Whatever magic had been imagined at the start had long evaporated. The project was completed, but the partnership died with it. Björn never worked with her again and quietly made a decision to avoid theatrical singers entirely. Years later, he described the experience as a warning. "Some voices fill the room," he said, "but leave no space for anyone else." Elaine Paige wasn't untalented. She was extraordinary. But to Björn, talent without restraint became a kind of theft. Not of credit, but of balance. And in music, balance was everything.